Hi, we at Vikram Tutors have made an attempt to incorporate AI in our coaching techniques with trying to convert text into pictorial depictions for our champion students. 1. Demand is a fundamental concept in economics, representing the quantity of a product or service that consumers are prepared to purchase. However, true demand goes beyond mere desire. It requires not only wanting a product, but also having the financial means and the willingness to pay the price at a particular moment. Without all three elements, desire, ability, and willingness, demand does not truly exist. This distinction helps clarify why some products, despite being popular, may not see actual sales if consumers lack the resources or motivation to buy them at the offered price. Understanding these components is essential for analyzing market behavior and predicting consumer responses.
2. It's important to distinguish between a simple desire for a product and actual demand. While many people may wish to own something, demand goes beyond mere want. True demand exists only when an individual not only desires a product, but also has the financial means and is willing to spend money to acquire it. In other words, demand is the combination of a wish, the ability to pay, and the readiness to make a purchase. Without all three elements, a desire remains just that, a wish, not a demand. This distinction is fundamental in understanding how markets operate and how businesses respond to consumer needs. 3. Free goods are resources that exist in abundance and are available to everyone without cost. Examples include air and sunlight, which are not owned or priced because their supply far exceeds demand. In contrast, economic goods are limited in supply and require a price for their use or consumption. These goods, such as food, clothing, and housing, are scarce relative to the desire for them. Because economic goods are not freely available, people must make choices about how to allocate them. The distinction between free and economic goods highlights the role of scarcity in economics and explains why not all resources are treated the same way in markets. 4. Demand can be categorized in several distinct ways, each highlighting a different aspect of consumer behavior and market dynamics. Individual demand refers to the quantity of a good or service that a single consumer is willing to purchase at various prices, while market demand aggregates this across all consumers in the market. Ex-ante demand represents the expected or planned purchase of a product, whereas ex-post demand reflects the actual quantity bought. Joint or complementary demand arises when two or more goods are used together, such as printers and ink cartridges. Direct demand pertains to goods consumed for their own sake, like food, while derived demand is linked to the demand for another product, such as steel for car manufacturing. Composite demand occurs when a good is required for multiple uses, like milk being used for drinking, making cheese, or producing butter. 5. Demand for a product or service is influenced by a variety of factors. Price is often the most immediate consideration, as higher prices tend to reduce demand, while lower prices can encourage it. Income levels also play a crucial role. When consumers have more disposable income, they are generally more willing to purchase goods. Tastes and preferences can shift demand, sometimes rapidly, due to trends or cultural changes. The availability and prices of related goods, such as substitutes and complements, also affect consumer choices. Expectations about the future, access to credit, changes in population size, and the way income is distributed across society further shape demand patterns. Additionally, climate conditions and government policies, such as taxes or subsidies, can have significant impacts on what and how much people choose to buy. 6. The demand function is a fundamental concept in economics that illustrates how the quantity of a good or service demanded varies with different factors. Key variables influencing demand include the price of the product, the income levels of consumers, the size and composition of the population, prevailing tastes and preferences, and government policies such as taxes or subsidies. By analyzing the demand function, we can better understand how changes in these variables impact consumer behavior. For example, a rise in income may increase demand for certain goods, while a higher price typically leads to a decrease in quantity demanded. This relationship helps businesses and policymakers anticipate market trends and make informed decisions. 7. The law of demand is a fundamental principle in economics. It states that, all else being equal, the quantity of a good or service demanded decreases as its price increases, and conversely, demand rises when the price falls. This relationship is based on the assumption that other factors, such as consumer income and preferences, remain unchanged. For example, if the price of apples goes up, people are likely to buy fewer apples. If the price drops, more people will be willing to purchase them. This inverse relationship between price and demand helps explain consumer behavior in markets and is a key concept for understanding how prices influence purchasing decisions. 8. The demand curve typically slopes downward, reflecting several key economic principles. One reason is diminishing marginal utility, which means that as consumers acquire more of a product, each additional unit provides less satisfaction, leading them to buy less at higher prices. The income effect also plays a role. When prices fall, consumers feel as though their purchasing power has increased, allowing them to buy more. The substitution effect occurs when a lower price makes a product more attractive compared to alternatives, encouraging consumers to switch. Additionally, as prices decrease, more buyers may enter the market, further increasing demand. Some products have multiple uses, so a lower price can prompt consumers to purchase more for different purposes, contributing to the downward slope of the demand curve. 9. While the law of demand states that consumers typically buy less of a good as its price rises, there are notable exceptions to this rule. Giffen goods, for example, are inferior products where higher prices can actually lead to increased consumption due to limited alternatives. Veblen goods defy the law of demand because their desirability increases with price, often due to their status symbol appeal. Expectations of future price changes can also influence demand, as consumers may purchase more in anticipation of rising costs. During emergencies, people may buy essential items regardless of price. Beliefs about price and quality can lead consumers to associate higher prices with better products, increasing demand. Additionally, fashion trends can drive demand for certain goods even as their prices climb. 10. The market demand curve represents the total quantity of a good or service that all consumers are willing and able to purchase at various prices. It is constructed by summing the individual demand curves of each buyer in the market. This aggregation reflects the collective buying behavior, showing how changes in price influence the overall demand. As more consumers enter the market, or existing consumers adjust their preferences, the market demand curve shifts accordingly. Understanding this curve is essential for businesses and policymakers, as it provides insight into how price changes can affect total sales and market outcomes. 11. Understanding the distinction between a change in quantity demanded and a change in demand is essential in economics. A change in quantity demanded refers to movements along the demand curve, which occur solely due to changes in the price of the product. For example, if the price of an item drops, consumers may buy more, resulting in a higher quantity demanded. In contrast, a change in demand means the entire demand curve shifts, either to the right or left. This shift is caused by factors other than price, such as changes in consumer income, preferences, or the prices of related goods. While price changes affect how much people buy at each price point, other influences can increase or decrease overall demand for a product regardless of its current price. 12. Giffen goods and inferior goods are both categorized as inferior, but they exhibit distinct behaviors in response to changes in price and income. For giffen goods, an increase in price paradoxically leads to an increase in demand, defying the typical law of demand. This phenomenon is rare and usually occurs under specific conditions, such as when the good is a staple in a consumer's diet and there are limited substitutes. In contrast, inferior goods experience a decrease in demand as consumer income rises, since people tend to switch to higher quality alternatives. While all giffen goods are inferior, not all inferior goods display the unique price-demand relationship seen in giffen goods. Understanding these differences helps clarify the complex ways consumers respond to economic changes. 13. The law of demand states that, all else being equal, as the price of a good or service decreases, the quantity demanded increases, and vice versa. Several key factors influence demand beyond just price. Income levels play a significant role, as higher income typically leads to greater demand for goods and services. Consumer tastes and preferences can shift demand, reflecting changes in trends or personal interests. Population size affects overall market demand, with larger populations generally increasing the total quantity demanded. The prices of related goods, such as substitutes and complements, also impact demand. For instance, a rise in the price of a substitute may boost demand for the original product. Finally, expectations about future prices or income can influence current demand, as consumers may adjust their purchases based on anticipated changes. Together, these determinants help explain the complex nature of consumer behavior in markets.